welcome. My name is Pawel Potasinski. I'm from Microsoft as well, just as Kim Manis. I'm a senior program manager on the Azure Synapse Analytics team. Fresh new, 3 months from starting my job, so excited to be here at Data Toboggan as well. So thank you for accepting my submission. And I'm going to talk about what's new and cool in Azure Synapse Analytics, which is going to be a bit of extension of what Kim has just shown you during the keynote. I'm going to show you my subjective choices of what happened during the last quarter, so starting from April to June. Apologies for eventual breaks here. I'm on vacation, so greetings from northern Poland, stormy and windy, yet beautiful. You can find me on Twitter and LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, I'm also running my own newsletter on what's new in Azure Data and Power BI, so feel free to subscribe. And this is going to be pretty lightweight session, no deep dive session. You'll get lots of great content today from community speakers. Later on, I'll be referencing to some of those sessions during my presentation. By that, let me start with this heads up, because I want you to know, first of all, the purpose of this session is to make you familiar with some of the newest features of Azure Synapse, and not just Azure Synapse, as you will see in a moment. The second one is to give you some content and resources that you may follow up after this session to make sure that you stay up to date with Azure Synapse, and also that you're active member of the community. And the very first resource I wanted to share with you is this aka.ms Synapse monthly update. If you're not tracking this, please start tracking this every single month. We are sharing monthly update of what's new in Azure Synapse Analytics. So watch it, observe it. It's a part of our blog, so definitely worth tracking. And most of my content is based on what we published on this blog during the last 3 months. So let me start with actually getting back to what Kim raised, that the intelligence platform we have is not just consisted of Azure Synapse. It also contains other products, other platforms that work together to bring you end-to-end experience in analytics. And the product that is probably the closest to Azure Synapse today is Power BI. And all the efforts we do as intelligence platform team is focused on several areas. Those areas are data integration, data engineering, warehousing, including lakehousing, data science, observational analytics, business intelligence, and governance. And today, I'm going to focus on 6 of them. I'm going to skip governance because Microsoft Purview, which is mostly for governance, is a broad topic and definitely far beyond my competencies. And I think also there are people who can cover this topic much better than me. So I will focus on 6 pillars of our intelligence platform. What's new in data integration, data engineering, warehousing, data science, observational analytics, and business intelligence. And yeah. So let's start with data integration. Data integration, as you probably know, is all about connecting to different data sources. Over 100 connectors in Synapse pipelines make this quite powerful data integration platform, but it's also about how to connect to different sources, maybe not bring the data into Azure Synapse or Data Lake, but also play with the data where it resides. And let's have access to data, right? There are a bunch of updates published during the last 3 months, and some of them are quite big, I would say, and long awaited. Some of them are smaller. So I picked 3 of them just to share my subjective feeling. What's cool about the newest features in Azure Synapse? Let's start with the biggest one. So during the Microsoft Build conference, we announced the public preview of Synapse Link for Microsoft SQL. I highlight this Microsoft SQL because you may at some point expect that, hey, there will be some Synapse links for different databases. Right now, there is a public preview for SQL Server 2022 and Azure SQL Database. I'm not going to get into details for this feature because you will have at least 2 sessions, as far as I remember, on Azure Synapse link for Microsoft SQL. So you will have Dennis and Kevin talking about this feature. So just briefly, what it's all about with Synapse Link for SQL. It's actually about bringing the data in near real time from those databases to Azure Synapse dedicated pools. And by that, you can address different scenarios. For example, bringing your data directly to the data warehouse that you're developing, right? So no data pipelines required. You just connect to your database, your operational database. You bring the data closer to your analytics, and then you just simply perform analytics. Notice that this scenario, the scenarios that are addressed by this feature are not just purely cloud-based. There is also a hybrid scenario because you can connect to SQL Server 2022 both on-prem and in another cloud. Now, the second feature I wanted to talk about is fuzzy join in data flows in Synapse pipelines. If you're familiar with data flows, this is actually a no-code or low-code experience for developing data transformation. And why I picked this feature and why I think this is cool? Well, basically, historically, I was working with data a lot, both in Synapse, Data Factory, and Power BI, and also historically in SQL Server. And a couple of times I had to use fuzzy matching or fuzzy lookup features of SQL Server integration services, as well as fuzzy join in Power Query. And it saved my lives basically several times. So I think it's quite cool to have this kind of experience in Dataflow. Let me show you a quick demo on how this may work. So here I have 2 entry data sets, very simple 1 column data sets, which contain some product names. But what you should notice is that those product names in both data sets are not quite the same. So they are similar, but they are different. And I wanted to join those 2 data sets to see whether there are some similar product names. So you may take it as a kind of data quality or the data matching scenario, right? So if I perform just a classical join, there are no matchings. So products from dataset A, they don't have corresponding rows in dataset B. When I turn on use fuzzy matching, which is just a single click box, single checkbox, the results of my join changes in a way that I can see several rows to have the corresponding rows in the second dataset. So you can use this feature as a kind of simple fuzzy matching in low-code or no-code experience. Please bear in mind that this feature right now requires disabling broadcasting, which may bring some impact on the performance. And also, if you want some more sophisticated fuzzy matching, then you probably will still focus on using expressions in data flows. And you can also find some nice articles from members of the data integration team, Mark Cromer, for example, which describe how you can perform it with functions like SoundX or something like this. Now, the other one I wanted to talk about is rerun pipeline with new parameters. This actually is going to simplify the way how you can rerun pipelines that you previously ran, but you want to change the parameters because, for example, the pipeline crashed, failed, and you want to change parameters to maybe try a different scenario. Until this moment, you had to switch between pipeline monitoring tab and and the pipeline itself. Right now, it's no longer necessary. You can simply go to the pipeline monitoring tab and click Rerun and pick option New Parameters. So why is it cool? It actually definitely speeds up the way you can test your pipelines and make them running successfully. Please bear in mind that the new run is considered as a new pipeline run, not a rerun. And one last thing before I go into the next part, the next area. Please notice that there is a pre-order option for the newly published book from Mark Cromer, principal program manager from data integration team, on data flows. So a feature I actually mentioned just a couple of slides ago. So if you want to build scalable ETL jobs using data flows, if you want to learn some ETL and cloud-based distributed pipeline patterns, then probably this may be a good book for you. You may check it for yourself. Now, from data integration, let's move to the data engineering. Let me go with the questions. Just at the very end of the session. Let's go with data engineering. Now, the number one announcement here for sure is Apache Spark 3.2, but there are also several different announcements that I'm going to also refer to. So with Apache Spark 3.2, we bring some serious investments from open source community to Synapse. So now you can spin up Apache Spark pools in Azure Synapse running Spark 3.2 runtime in public preview. And this actually brings several improvements because first of all, you will see that there is a support for Koalas integration, and Koalas means that you will have pandas but optimized for PySpark. It's no longer a single node operation pandas. It brings distributed data engineering based on pandas to Spark in Synapse. Then you have out of the box adaptive query execution enabled, which means that you will see improvements in query performance just like that. And also, what you will notice is that small query execution will improve in performance. Actually, there is another reason for being aware of Spark 3.2. There is an ANSI SQL compatibility in Spark 3.2, so you may also benefit from that. I'm not the biggest Spark expert, so if you want to find more on why actually Spark 3.2 is so cool, and maybe also see some demos, please step by to Ask the Expert session we are running with Simon Whiteley very soon on July 13th. And yeah, this is a part of Azure Synapse Influencers program. So please keep in mind this event is happening. I'm not going to show you the demo of Spark 3.2. There is another session on how to optimize notebooks today. So I think Spark will be touched as well. And another one is Spark configuration. And so right now you can simply gather all your Spark configurations in a single pane, Apache Spark configuration. You can visually configure your set up your Spark configurations, save them, export and import, and also attach those Spark configurations to newly created or existing Spark pools, as well as to Spark sessions. So a quick demo on that. So basically, if you go to Manage and Apache Spark configurations in Synapse Studio, you can create new Apache Spark configuration, give it a name, put some annotations, and then configure properties, which are of course suggested, and you can pick them from the list. And then you can put a value which is validated. So there is auto validation and auto suggestion of names for properties. After you configure this configuration, you can simply switch to your Apache Spark pools and attach the existing Spark configuration to your Spark pools, which is just in the settings. So Apache Spark configuration is the new option for each Spark pool, and then you can create your library of Apache Spark configurations, which can be attached to, for example, different versions of runtimes. It's typically required that you for example, set up different versions of packages and libraries whenever you spin up different runtime version. And also you can choose which Spark configuration you will use during your Spark sessions. So why I think it's cool? Because it simplifies the way you can manage your Spark configurations. You can also export this in JSON files and import into, for example, another workspace, so it can be easily shared among different environments. Now, the other thing that I want to touch here is reference unpublished notebooks. So imagine you have the notebook that is not published to your live repository or Git repository, and then you want to reference this notebook. So run this run magic command, and until today, if the notebook is not published, you cannot reference it. All changes when you have this enable unpublished notebook reference option. You simply click on that, and now automatically you can use the notebooks that even are not published to your repositories, and then everything works smoothly. Why I think this option is cool? Because it actually simplifies the way you can locally debug things and test notebooks as you develop them. So your repositories don't get messy by publishing not verified, not tested notebooks, which can work together. Now let's switch to data warehousing and lake housing, actually, because it's not just about warehousing. So here we have also a bunch of features during last 3 months. And let me start with number one, cross-subscription restore for dedicated SQL pools. Is actually one of the most requested features because lots of companies run their environments separated by storing dev, test, and production environments and different subscriptions. So actually, this capability that you can take your data warehouse from one subscription and restore it on different subscription makes things like setting up dev and test scenarios much simpler. And you can run it from using different methods, using PowerShell, API, whatever you prefer. And data templates actually were covered by Kim a bit, so I'm going to just briefly talk about it. As you probably noticed, there is this database designer piece that we have to work visually with designing lake houses or lake databases. So now you can pick from one of 18 industry templates and then search for specific objects, like, for example, customer table for retail, and then you can pick which actually metadata you need from this out-of-the-box table. So you can actually get rid of some columns and even configure your own schema for this table. But also you can easily add related tables. So make this structure of this database much more complex. You can set up all the settings for this lake database, like, for example, where you're going to store the data and stuff like this. Later on, you can also configure mapping. So there is a map data feature in preview, which allows you to quickly start and construct data flows that will fill all those tables with the data coming from different sources. So why I think this is cool? Well, because you can start from some well-designed industry templates and not start from the scratch when you have to deal with, for example, retail data or you have, for example, data coming from a different line of business applications like Dynamics 365, and you can just align to the CDM models, whatever, right? There's also a nice feature in data and in this database designer, wildcards for custom folder hierarchies. So when you configure the input folder for your table, you can specify wildcards like star, which makes things quite easy to set up a table on top of quite complex hierarchies of folders right now. I'm not going to show this one. I'm going to switch to clone lake database. So right now you can also do things like this. Imagine you have a lake database which you can query with SQL, right? So I have very simple lake database, 2 tables, nothing very sophisticated, but I want to quickly clone it to make let's say a development version of this lake database. So right now I can simply click on the database, choose clone, and then I have all my tables cloned. I mean, the metadata of those tables are cloned. I can create a new lake database, provide a new name for this, and even I can start playing with the metadata of those tables. So I can make totally different lake database out of my original one. So I can change settings for storage, like which linked service is used for this lake database, which folders, which input folders are used under the tables. So why I think this thing is cool? Because it's actually a very quick way to make copies of your lake databases, the metadata of them, and also you can pick atomic tables and clone a single table at a time. So that makes things easier if you're developing your lake database. Last one I want to show you refers to serverless SQL. So if you use serverless SQL, you probably know that there are several rules of thumb for optimization. So, for example, so far until this moment, if you wanted to get some optimal performance for queries that use open row set function on top of, for example, CSV files, you had to provide. You actually should provide a schema describing the columns that are stored within the files, because that would narrow the data types. Specifically, it refers to character strings and character datasets. Right now, you can actually omit the schema definitions, and the mechanism, the optimizer underneath will trigger the optimization for you whenever you omit schema or specify character column longer than 100 bytes. So that actually simplifies development a lot. And also, it's good to know that this is actually the direction that we are taking. So simplifying things and providing out-of-the-box performance is something that is definitely an important part of investment in Azure Synapse. Now let me go to data science. Again, I'm not a data scientist, I'm far from it. If you work with Synapse, or if you tried Synapse in terms of data science, you probably know that Synapse provides several ways to integrate with different machine learning and cognitive services, APIs, to provide you with low-code or no-code experience and run your machine learning directly from Synapse Studio. This is not what I'm going to show you. Actually, during the last 3 months, I noticed one update to data science thing, and I'm not going to focus today on this one because I'm not an expert on deep learning stuff. Horvath or Petastorm definitely probably needed, but I'm not data science expert. Instead of that, I want to give you a heads up on a feature that exists for some time, but is constantly developed, and there is a actually very active team behind developing it more and more. Synapse ML, which is actually an open source Spark library distributed ML algorithms for Apache Spark. So this brings 2 worlds. One is the Microsoft investments in data science and cognitive services. Another one is open source investments. So you can find different algorithms. Maybe I should click this link, aka.ms/spark, and just show you how these things may look like. If you go to this website, aka.ms/spark, you will see that there are quick examples of how you can deal with Synapse using Synapse ML with different machine learning and cognitive services on your own. So you can use cognitive services, deep learning, responsible AI, and different open source stuff. And what actually is crucial here, please notice that everything here happens in just one line of code, basically. That's the huge power of Synapse ML. I'm going to show you this in an example. So imagine we have this great setup of speakers for Data Toboggan. Greetings to all speakers. And I want to simply get the names and maybe roles of those people. What I could do is I can run this simple piece of code to connect to my cognitive service, Azure Cognitive Services, and run simple OCR task. Also notice that this is actually getting connection to my cognitive services via linked service in Azure Synapse. So with just a line of code, you can run your analytics and find out that, hey, Dennis is a speaker, Filipa is a speaker, and Hein is a speaker here at Data Toboggan. The very next step could be taking this JSON file, saving it to the data lake, and maybe expanding it using serverless SQL. Or if you're a Spark fan, just play with Apache Spark in a notebook to get the data in a tabular format. So this is Synapse ML, and when I think of it, I think it's cool because it simplifies how you can start playing with different machine learning, cognitive services, APIs, and models out of the box without any knowledge on how they work, what data science is, and simply take those models and use it in your analytics out of the box with just line of code. And also it supports binding generators for different languages, so you can play not just with Python as I just shown you, but also with Java, .NET, and other languages. Now let's switch to observational analytics. I know I'm running out of time, but yeah, probably gonna make it. So this one is actually about the analytics of more real-time data. So things like time series, IoT data, telemetry. This is all about observational analytics. And if you look at Synapse, it's mostly about data explorer pools, which actually is an adaptation of Azure Data Explorer service, which is a separate service for things Synapse. And this team is actually very active. So during the last 3 months, we got plenty of updates from Azure Data Explorer team. I'm going to focus on several of them for a moment. So first of all, in Azure Data Explorer Web Explorer UI, we got things like exporting Excel file that is actually live connected to Azure Data Explorer cluster. So right now you can write your query, click open in Excel, and it opens Excel file that under the hood has ready to use a Power Query connection and query that takes your data from Data Explorer database. So by that, you can actually move your data exploration and data analytics based on telemetry and IoT data to Excel and keep your data fresh all the time by simply refreshing the Power Query. Under the hood, of course, this query executes the KQL code. So I think it's cool because it's another case where we integrate the world of Definitely enterprise analytics, observation analytics with self-service analytics in Excel. Another one, and this is totally different, is a connector for Power Automate, Logic Apps, and Power Apps. Right now, you can use those three Power Automate, Power Apps, and Logic Apps to connect to Azure Data Explorer clusters and do several things. First of all, you can run KQL queries, so you can query the data that comes to your clusters, to your databases. You can render charts out of those queries. So that actually immediately causes that you may build reports and send those reports using, for example, email. You can send notifications or alerts based on data. So imagine scenarios where you monitor some data in factories or wherever you have your telemetry and IoT data, and you set up alerts that, for example, when some metric meets your threshold. And also you can schedule jobs using control commands on the clusters, which means that you can use this technique, this connector, to automate things on your ADX clusters. Another cool thing is the new homepage on the Web Explorer UI, where you can find samples for exploration. So the big point here is that you can simply start learning how Data Explorer works and how KQL as a query language works by using ready-to-use samples. And the best part of it is you don't spin up any cluster here. It's all free to test and run under the hood. There's no need to run any compute. But keep in mind that you can also start your own free cluster. So if you're not familiar with this actually great feature for quickly starting learning Data Explorer, you should go to aka.ms/custo-free and grab your free cluster. And this is actually, you can play with this cluster for 1 year and learn how to run KQL queries on top of telemetry and IoT data. So this thing is definitely cool for learning. You will find on this new homepage, you will find lots of quick links to learning resources and documentation, which helps you in learning this observational analytics. Now let's switch to the very last part of this session, business intelligence. Now, when I think of business intelligence in terms of intelligence platform, it's slightly moves from Synapse to Power BI, and you know that those two platforms work together quite smoothly. So, yeah, datamart for sure is #1 feature here. But I would also write that there are different features announced during last quarter, like, for example, the GA of automatic aggregations in Power BI, which covers not only Synapse, but also different data warehousing engines. There is also nice Power BI integration for PowerPoint, so you can right now run your live Power BI reports in PowerPoint slides. And also, which is going to show up during this conference, goals are now known as metrics and RGA, so you can track your OKRs or key metrics using some scorecards. You can find Power BI updates each month on the Power BI blog. I'm not going to refer to that, and I'm going to switch to datamart. This is a great thing, I think, because it actually moves the way we analyze things from the enterprise world, which is mostly about Synapse, more to self-service side, which is on the Power BI side. So it's actually a combination of Power BI data flow, so how you ingest the data and transform it. Then it brings fully managed Azure SQL database to store your data, and Power BI dataset built on top of this SQL database data. So it actually allows you to address scenarios where you store your enterprise data stores in Synapse, like data lake, lakehouse, or data warehouse, but then you grab your subsets of data, maybe domain-oriented subsets of data, to Power BI datamart, and move the responsibilities for modeling and reporting to departments or domain-oriented teams. And also this Power BI Data Mart allows you to, as you could see on the demo from Priya during Kim's session, you can build your measures, relationships, and also row level security on top of the model that is created along with the Data Mart. So I'm going actually to show you only the way how you can connect to Synapse. So in Synapse, you have those endpoints for dedicated SQL pools, serverless SQL pools, and then you can use those endpoints to connect to your databases. So here I have a simple serverless SQL database, which only has 2 views connecting to the data lake. Now, when I switch to Power BI, I can create this new data mart stuff. So I simply click Get Data, and I have a bunch of connectors just like I normally do with Power BI. So I search for Synapse connector, and I have this single one. I put my serverless SQL endpoint as a server name. I pick the database. I could actually write it down or select from existing ones, and I select organizational account as an authentication method. After I choose my connection account, I can connect to the server SQL database, see my ready-to-use views, click and choose which views I want to actually have in my data mart. But that's not it. I can also perform transformations using well-known Power Query engine, so normal data flows. And I can, for example, filter my data and under the hood use the features like data partitioning in data lake to make sure that loading the data in the data mart is quite fast. And this actually makes things easier to go from terabytes or petabytes of data to hundreds of gigabytes, for example, which you can store in data mart. And later on, you can develop your models and, of course, prepare your reports. So I have 3 minutes. So to wrap things up, you saw that there are a bunch of improvements in Synapse and also in Power BI as a part of intelligence platform. Those two platforms work together as one. And what I want to encourage you to do is actually to get involved in all the things we do with communities. So first of all, I encourage you to track us on Twitter, subscribe to our YouTube channel, track our blog, including monthly update. If you're not in the Azure Synapse Influencers program, definitely you should join this program. Lots of fun, lots of sessions on the way. I mentioned the session with Simon very soon. And also keep in mind, there is this Synapse Ideas website where you can share your suggestions or ideas. And just to give you a heads up, we are working on making sure that this site is actually alive. So yes, keep your ideas flowing.